Well, during the campaign, Justin Trudeau found himself defending the media's right to ask questions. And he said he'd always respect that right. Was that a contender's attempt to curry favor, or is a new era dawning? Althea Raj is the Ottawa bureau chief of the Huffington Post. Sachi Cole, senior writer at BuzzFeed Canada. Hayden King is director of Indigenous Governance at Ryerson University. And Marissa Nelson is one of the CBC's leading digital media experts. Their thoughts in a moment, but first, this background. When Justin Trudeau was taking questions in the National Press Theatre last week, it was the first time a Prime Minister had used the room in 8 years. Stephen Harper was never a fan of the media, even barricaded himself away from them with wire fencing during one campaign.
Okay.
His party supporters often booed reporters for asking important questions. Harper just smiled. Not that some of his predecessors were much better. Jean Chrétien sometimes made reporters chase him, even once on a bicycle. Brian Mulroney used to scrum from a stairway so he could stay prime ministerial and above the fray. And Pierre Trudeau, well, let's just say he felt above it all without having to go upstairs. Now, Trudeau 2.0, or not your father's Trudeau, as some like to say. Listen what happened when Liberals tried booing a reporter during the campaign.
Hey, guys. Hey, we have respect for journalists in this country. They ask tough questions and they're supposed to, okay? Sorry.
Excuse me, can we hear that again?
We have respect for journalists in this country. They ask tough questions and they're supposed to.
All this came as a shock to veteran journalists. Look what crusty old Terry Milewski tweeted at the news conference last week. This is odd. There's a prime minister taking questions in the National Press Theatre with a journalist chairing.
It's a pleasure to be here in the
Well, clearly everything's going to be different now. Or is it? Time for some questions. All right. Are we looking at a new era of transparency? Althea, you're there every day in Ottawa, so you've seen the differences. What do you think? Are we looking at that?
Compared to the Harper regime, yes. How long will it last? Is anyone's guess. I think there genuinely is a desire with Trudeau and the people around him to communicate more effectively, more frequently with journalists, and they don't view journalists as necessarily their enemies. If that changes, though, if they do something unpopular, if there's some controversy, like we saw last year, for example, on the abortion question, they were very quick to restrict access. So I suspect that will happen again. But for the moment, I think there's a desire to sort of blow the windows open and prove to everybody that Justin Trudeau is not Stephen Harper.
Sachi, you buying into this?
No, because I don't buy into anything. I think politicians are open until it becomes inconvenient for them to be open. And I think it's been really easy to feel very optimistic about this election. But I mean, as soon as something happens that maybe they don't want people to have access for, I wouldn't be surprised if they restricted it.
Hayden.
The bar is pretty low. I mean, I think Trudeau taking questions from journalists at this point is pretty much revolutionary. It's going to be pretty difficult to match the opacity of Stephen Harper's relationship with the media. So I think it'll be different. There'll be more access, maybe a better relationship, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a new era of transparency. I think that, as Sachi says, that Justin Trudeau is a politician. He's the prime minister. He's going to have a relationship with the media, a good relationship with the media, as long as it suits him.
You know, I think it's easy, and a lot of people do, place all the blame for a lack of transparency on the Harper years. But there really has been kind of a staging of this through administration after administration that goes back, quite some distance. So you do wonder whether or not, okay, are they putting the brakes on that? Is the Justin Trudeau team really serious? Marissa, when you look at all this, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the relationship between the Prime Minister and journalists is always going to be adversarial. It frankly, should be. But while the expectations of him in some ways would have been very low going into the election, I think, in fact, on this front, the expectations are very high. And they're not just high with journalists, they're high with Canadians because he has been more open. He's certainly used social media much more. He's answered questions. He's been more approachable. So I think he's setting himself, expectations high, and he's now going to have to exceed those expectations.
Now, I want to try and get at what may change actually in this, but I want to show you a couple of pictures because this is about approaching, being approachable. This was a long time ago. It's the late 70s, early 80s. Ed Broadbent, then the leader of the NDP, he's giving a scrum, which still happens, with reporters. But watch this. When you go a little wider, okay, there's a young reporter there on the outskirts watching all this, but look even wider in the shot. Look who's standing there waiting his turn at the microphone. Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister at the time. And, everybody used to kind of gather in the same room, and everybody was approachable, and you could stick a mic in front of their faces, the leaders. Not so much this time around. What could change here, Althea? What do you expect to change?
Well, he's no longer the leader of the third party, so I don't suspect we will have scrums after question period. In fact, we know question period is going to change in the Liberal Party's platform. Justin Trudeau wants to answer questions once a week. We're not sure if that means more than once a week, so we will only have him once a week in the Commons. I think that's
but once a week for a full question period?
Question
so like
time.
the British setup.
Exactly, modeled on the British question time. So he would have Wednesdays, for example, where he takes all of the questions, including the questions from his own backbench. And then the rest of the days, other ministers would be answerable for their portfolios. He says that doesn't mean that if he's in the House, he won't answer certain questions, but you can rest assured that perhaps he will be more open and communicative outside of the Commons, but not necessarily inside the Commons. So that's something that's going to change. With regards to transparency, I mean, they released a 32-point plan in June when they released their logo Real Change, which is, filled with access to information reforms, open data, making government transparency by default instead of something that you need to request. I don't suspect we're going to see an immediate change, probably sometime later in 2016. I don't know that we're going to have monthly or even weekly press conferences. The Liberals have not given us a number on that, but I think that there is a desire at the moment to show that Justin Trudeau is not like Stephen Harper, that change meant something, and that in this honeymoon period, especially when he has no controversies on his plate and nothing really to say or defend, that we're going to see a more open and communicative Prime Minister.
Hayden, does that make you feel confident that things are changing?
I don't really think so. And if you look back to the campaigns that Stephen Harper ran, he also campaigned on a new era of transparency and accountability, and broke most of those promises. So it's convenient, obviously, for Trudeau to talk about the new relationship and the new approach to government, but we'll see what happens when he actually forms government. And I think forming government will give us a good indication of what changes, whether or not he'll loosen the centralization of power around the PMO and let cabinet members actually speak their minds and voice their opinions. I think that'll be a positive sign. But I don't really expect much change, to be honest with you. I doubt we'll see Trudeau knocked off talking points. I think that we'll still very much have a scripted relationship with the Prime Minister and the PMO.
Why? You think you're cynical?
I know, I'm
You're not buying
impressed.
anything.
I'm almost jealous.
Are you basically feeling the same way that Hayden is?
Yeah, I mean, I think Canadians have earned their cynicism at this point. I mean, why wouldn't you be cynical after this much time? I think the difference is that Trudeau used the internet in a way that maybe we haven't seen in the past. And when you use social media in the way he did, you are asking for people to want access to with you and from you. So
when you go down that road,
you're going to get people
better
saying,
deliver.
exactly. So you can't just say, I'm going to use this so that I can get access to you and I can talk to you and then I can find out what my voters want. But then the other side of it is that when they start asking you for accountability and for you to answer questions, you have to do that because you open that door.
But he's not naive. He must have realized
of course.
if he's going there that he's going to have to deliver on that
but I don't know if he will. I mean, it kind of depends on when something happens.
Marissa?
And he's going to have to keep raising the bar each year. I mean, we are in the honeymoon phase right now. Everything looks, rosy and happy. But as he goes through his term, everybody, when Obama talked about reading those few letters every day that his staff chose from citizens for him to read, we all thought that was really nice. And isn't that, that connects him to the people. But if you talk about it now, it just seems like, well, what else is he doing? So as time goes on, he has high expectations he's going to have to exceed, and then he's going to have to keep raising the bar in terms of being open, transparent, communicating.
All right. Openness and transparency isn't just about the relationship with the media, as we witnessed in the last administration, is also in the relationship with scientists who work for the government, what the government allows them to say about their research, also with the long-form census, and there are other examples as well. Any indication on those fronts?
Well, on the platform, they committed to bring back the long-form census, and they committed to unmuzzling the scientists. And since I suspect a lot of the impetus for, I guess, starving the public of that data was so that you wouldn't have stats about child poverty has exploded and we should probably address it. I suspect because at this point there is no need for the Liberals to want to not have that discussion, that there is no need for them to mute the dissent that is within government. So I don't see why they wouldn't fulfill their campaign pledges on those things.
So when the swearing-in takes place next week, we should see lineups at the microphones of scientists and researchers within government?
I suspect that if CBC calls and wants an interview with the climate change scientists at Environment Canada, well, then they probably will get it.
Hayden, on that?
Yeah, I think that I agree that there's no reason not to fulfill those promises. They're popular among Canadians. I think people want the long-form census back. People want to hear from scientists. But I think the first thing that the new government will have to do is build capacity back up in the public service, because I think it's been many years of people leaving or people being fired, people not being able to tolerate the conditions under which they're working. So I think if Trudeau actually commits to investing back in the public service, then I think that would lead to Canadians being able to communicate directly with the people that are serving us.
All right, I got to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to do a little further on what Sachi and Marissa were talking about. Is social media now the most important weapon in any leader's overall message strategy? Welcome back. Here at the table tonight, Althea Raj, Sachi Cole, Hayden King, and Marissa Nelson. Sachi, you start us off here. I mean, I think it's fair to say that he's the first true kind of social media prime minister that we've seen. But can he keep that up? Do you expect him to keep that kind of pace up? I mean, you don't have to be cynical here on this. I mean, either you're into social media or you're not. This guy seems to be.
I mean, I think with everything you do it until it gets difficult. I mean, we saw that there was a woman from BC who wrote an open letter to him on Facebook, and he responded by saying that he read it and he appreciated it, and he was going to really he was going to think about those things, and that's all really nice. But again, he's at the kindest, warmest place that he can possibly be in his time as prime minister. He's just won. Everything's great and beautiful. So I don't know, but I think what's really important is that at least he knows how to use the internet, and that he's there and using it and active. Which tells me that he's at least paying attention to
And is he
younger
actually
voters.
the one who's doing it, as we know in
I think
past
some of the
examples?
tweets are from him, and some of them are from his staff.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think even being there says that he's active and aware of it, which is important.
Marissa?
And see, just that point, you don't know if he's writing them or not. I mean, I think one step further would be at least to be saying when he is writing it, so you know when it's him or one of his or one of his staff. And it's interesting because he has been. I mean, social was certainly an intricate part of his campaign, and people now expect it. But he's going to have to keep developing new tricks. It's only once where you reply to a single Facebook Facebook post, and everybody's going to be like, "Oh, isn't that nice?" But then what? You know.
Then 100,000 posts get
Right,
sent
and
your
is he going to respond to them
No, of
all?
course
No,
not.
but
Right.
maybe he should. I mean, I would expect his next thing is an AMA on Reddit. You know, starting to try to push the envelope a little bit more. But it's interesting because it's certainly, instead of it being a one-to-one relationship, so a prime minister perhaps writing to one citizen and returning one letter, it's a one-to-many. So it can be incredibly powerful because now that nice moment can be captured and much more public. However, the public sniff test is on a hair trigger. You know, if they think it's just playing to curry favor, it won't work.
Where are you, Hayden, on the social media aspect of all this?
I think he used it effectively. You know, we may not know when he tweets, when it's him that tweets, but we know when it's him taking selfies with fans in subway stations. I mean, I think that his team was able to cultivate an image of authenticity somehow. I mean, this is someone that has the most elite background you can imagine in Canada, and yet through social media, he appeared authentic, you know, and down to earth, and somebody that Canadians could identify with. And so I think that was part of his his social media use. And I don't think he's going to be able to do it when he becomes prime minister. And he's going to have a security detail. He's going to have distance between regular Canadians. But I think that he'll continue to use social media. It's a great way to actually just bypass traditional media and speak directly to Canadians. So I think he'll continue to use it. It'll change, but he'll continue to use it to shape his brand as, you know, authentic.
Well, as we were hearing today, he's apparently already told his security detail that he wants to keep doing at least some of that stuff. We'll see how that tension between those two sides works out. Althea, you get the last word on this.
Yeah, well, I disagree, I think, with some of the characterization. I think that social media and his presence on social media, which is aimed at making him more relatable and making people feel like they're part of the process and sort of the inside look, that's going to continue. And I know that his team is currently sort of discussing how to use the different channels that he has, whether to set up you know, like a 24 Sussex Drive, kind of like the 10 Downing that David Cameron has in the UK, to have more like official sort of bulletins going out for Twitter, and then keeping the Justin Trudeau handle to have the sort of inside look, the selfies at the metro station with his constituents, that sort of stuff. I think it is very important for them to keep those people engaged, because those are the people that voted for him. Keep those people feeling like they're part of the process, because that's really important to Liberal fundraising as well. I mean, there are strategic decisions why they not only want to sell their man as this relatable guy.
All right. Good discussion. Thank you all.